Maybe you've heard that the autobiographical true story of trauma called Baby Reindeer is blowing up on Netflix. After a few people mentioned it as really both triggering and powerful, I felt really compelled to watch it. So, if you're someone like me who's been a trauma survivor and is deciding whether to watch this or not, I just wanted to make this video to discuss some of the important things to consider. So join me for this video and we will give you some tips on if you do decide to watch it, how to ground out afterwards, and also help you make an educated guess whether you want to watch it or not. And again, I am a therapist, but I'm not your therapist. So, in this day and age, we have so much triggering content. You can't go anywhere without finding some of it. However, in this case, the depiction of trauma, stalking, and sexual assault could definitely trigger individuals who've been through similar experiences, potentially exacerbating PTSD symptoms. I've heard people say in therapist review videos that even watching it as a therapist like myself, I found it to be pretty triggering. And that sounds like that's been the consensus even among the mental health community. So, if you're on the fence of whether to watch it, I would definitely consider how resourced are you. Maybe schedule a therapy appointment the next day. Definitely don't be like me and lose a day to binge watching it because it's pretty intense to consume all at once. One thing we want to really be mindful about is avoiding re-traumatization. Particularly the acts of SA are pretty graphic in the depiction of Baby Reindeer. One thing I like to do when I'm watching violent or triggering content is fast forward. Okay. I was watching a therapist review video. They said, watch out for episode 4. I had a trigger warning already. That was going to be the trauma dump episode. Again, I find myself fast forwarding through a lot of content if it is gruesome or triggering or just creating a lot of negative emotions. So, permission to skip the episode. I think if you're someone who is feeling FOMO but doesn't want to watch the whole thing, I think that's where YouTube clip videos are great. You could get the consensus of the story without having to really get engrossed in it and dive deep into it. So I find, especially maybe therapist sponsored content, definitely is sensitized to that sort of thing. Now, this is a big one. Oftentimes people feel a lack of control. It's something might be really activating. And yet, just like whenever you're binge watching an episode, you want to find out what happens next. And that's how they hook you. So when we're feeling compelled to watch, despite maybe our best intuition not to, that's when we're more vulnerable to get easily overwhelmed and triggered. And this could lead to a loss of control over your emotional well-being. We don't want that for you. Definitely use your best judgment. I definitely would not recommend binge watching this series if you do decide to watch it. But if you're a person with trauma who's considering watching Baby Reindeer, just know that it could be validating and incredibly understanding. This show may provide a platform for you to see your experiences and reflect, potentially offering a sense of validation and understanding. Often what we get in group therapy, this feeling that we're not alone. I'm not the only one this has happened to. Because when we feel shame, which the series does an incredible job of, you feel the shame that he's been carrying around. Sometimes we call it the long suitcase you drag behind you. Dealing with that shame can be incredibly isolating, and the hardwired response of shame is to hide. So often people hide their abuse. There's a particularly touching moment at the end. I won't do a spoiler here, but it sort of speaks to how common abuse is. So if you know, you know. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. So there can be a cathartic effect. Watching characters go through similar challenges can provide this cathartic release, allowing you to process your emotions from hopefully a safe distance. It can also provide the sense of empowerment, like witnessing characters overcome trauma can inspire feelings of hope and empowerment. So let's talk about one of the biggest questions, which is, why does the character in Baby Reindeer continue to interact with his perpetrators? I think this is a great example of the intricacies of trauma bonding, also sometimes called Stockholm Syndrome. So I think that this is a little bit of a victim blaming statement that I used to hear all the time when I was working in rape crisis or domestic violence crisis hotlines, is people sort of go, well, why don't they just leave? So there's a lot of barriers to leaving. A lot of times people don't have the healthy boundaries. They may not have the resources. They may not be able to survive on their own. Those are sort of some more general reasons why people stay in abusive situations, but we're going to jump a little bit more into the topic of Baby Reindeer and specifically what some of the characters are dealing with. One of my favorite parts of Baby Reindeer is there's the line that's something like, nothing like getting what you want to actually realize you don't want it. Ooh, oh my gosh. The way that he talks about fame was particularly powerful for me as someone who's an aspiring content creator. It is incredibly powerful to have people see you and enjoy your work, and yet it can also be ultimately a way to lose yourself in the chasing of fame. And one thing I've learned as I've hit certain milestones for success is that unless you're intentionally creating meaning and satisfaction, it can kind of feel empty if you're not really celebrating it. Because by the time you hit the place you want to go, you are on to the next place. I thought this show did a great job of offering insights into the complexities of trauma and its effects. It really depicted a lot of the sort of worst moments associated with PTSD and depression and anxiety. It was really powerful as far as painting the characters as flawed and real. In DBT, we call that a dialectic. Two opposite things can be true. And so instead of showing characters as all good or all bad, they really showed most of the characters had some pretty significant flaws and also some tenderness in their humanity. And so I think that this is a powerful sort of new compassionate undertone with this kind of show that I've not seen a lot of people really be able to hit on. And so I thought that it did a great job increasing awareness and reducing stigma surrounding mental health issues. Also did a great job exploring the LGBTQ population. And one of my reactions to the show was, where are all the therapists? We need some therapists in play. The main character does date a trans therapist. And so I thought that that was some good visibility. However, I think we needed some actual therapy in play for, I'd say, pretty much everybody involved. I think that that definitely could have helped. I think another important piece that makes it both beautiful and triggering is the complexities of the characters. I've seen a few interviews by Richard Gatt, the creator of Baby Reindeer, as he shares his lived trauma experience. And he talks about wanting to convey the moral gray zone. And unlike most sort of villain hero stories, he certainly does not depict himself as the hero in this, and there's many missteps that he made to actually make the situation worse, which kind of reminds me of a DBT saying that we would always say with regards to distress tolerance, which is how to tolerate the crisis, sort of the reemergence of trauma symptoms, the really tough moments in our life, right? How do we deal with that? Well, we would say in DBT, if you can't make it better, don't make it worse. And so he's acknowledging that he has made it worse. And I think often in media, we see sort of a black and white depiction. The villains are the bad guys, and maybe we're even cheering for them in the end when they get taken care of, let's say. And this piece really doesn't do this. He really helps the audience feel compassionate towards a stalker and really explores the intricacies of serious mental health issues. And so I think while this is sort of a beautiful portrayal, I think it can also be quite triggering because often people do put a perpetrator into the villain category, and to see the humanity underneath, I feel, is a sort of necessary step in our culture. And yet I think for people who have been hurt at the hands of a perpetrator, it can feel probably pretty confusing to also see their humanity. And not sure what to say about that exactly, but just wanted to notate that I think that that is both a beautiful and tragic and potentially traumatizing impact of the way that this was depicted. Ultimately, the decision to watch Baby Reindeer or any similar content should be made with careful consideration of your own mental health needs and boundaries. If you do choose to watch, consider seeking emotional support from trusted friends, family members, mental health professionals to help navigate any emotional challenges that may arise. So use your best judgment. And I think when in doubt, that's probably a no. Go ahead and skip it. Okay. Don't worry, something will be trending in the next 5 minutes anyway, and you can get up on that bandwagon.